Welcome to Free Coding Academy's Unit 5 review video for Computer Science A. Unit 5 is called Writing Classes. Topic 5.1, Anatomy of a Class. So classes are used to model real or imagined objects with characteristics and behaviors. So each class defines instance variables which store data specific to each object and methods which describe what the object can do. So if you recall from earlier, we had a dog class and it had instance variables or attributes such as color, which described the dog's fur color, and it had age, so describing the dog's age, and it also had methods such as bark. And you can have other methods, so for instance, eat food, perform tricks, etc. Next, encapsulation means hiding a class's internal workings from external access. So this would refer to variables that are declared as private. So variables or methods, okay? All instance variables are declared private for this course and can only be changed or accessed through public getter methods. So private means it can only be accessed within the class and it's used to declare instance variables and internal methods. Public means it can be accessed from outside the class and it's used for methods that interact with private data. Topic 5.2, Constructors. A constructor sets up an object's starting state when it's created, and it assigns initial values to the object's instance variables. If you don't write a constructor, Java supplies a no-argument default constructor automatically. And so this default constructor sets each instance variable to its default value. So this would be 0 for numbers, such as int and double, and it would be null for object references like string, and false for Boolean values. So when you include parameters in a constructor, they behave like local variables within that constructor. They're used to pass in data and assign values to the object's instance variables. So for instance, in the dog class that we had before, we can pass in parameters such as brown for the color and 4 for the age. And so that would create a dog that originally has a fur color of brown and an age of 4, which could be changed later on through other methods. Next, topic 5.3, documentation with comments. So comments are ignored by Java when the code runs. They're just notes for programmers. So types of comments. If you have 2 slashes, that is a single line comment. If you have a slash and then an asterisk and then another asterisk and a slash, that is a multi-line comment. If you have a forward slash and then 2 asterisks and then another asterisk and then a forward slash again, that is a Java doc comment. And this generates official documentation for classes and methods in Java. Next, a precondition. So this is what must be true before a method runs so it works properly. So the method doesn't check the precondition, it just assumes it's already true. So whatever parameters the user enters in must match the preconditions. Next, the postconditions should always be true after a method finishes running. Describes what the result to expect or how the object state will change after execution. So programmers write code so that if the preconditions are met, the postconditions will be achieved. Topic 5.4, accessor methods. So a getter is a method that returns the value of an instance or static variable. A non-void method returns a value rather than performing an action, and this is what getters typically are. And the return type must match the type of the variable it retrieves. In Java, methods use return by value. And so this means when returning a primitive type, a copy of the value is returned. And when returning a reference type, the reference is copied, not the object itself. Next, the return keyword sends control back to where the method or constructor was originally called. So it returns the value and then returns back to wherever that method or constructor ends. Next, the toString method is usually overridden with a toString method that properly describes an object in string form rather than giving the memory address, which is what typically happens when you just try to do system.out.print and then you put in the object's name. It's just going to give you the memory address, which is in most cases is useless. So instead, programmers will write their own toString method, which gives specific information about the object in string form. So it includes information about the object's internal state, such as instance variable values. So if you use system.out.print object or add an object to a string, for example, if you have the string value and then plus an object name, Java automatically calls that object's toString method. So unless you write your own toString method, which overrides the one that's already existing by default, you're going to get the memory address. Next, topic 5.5, mutator methods. A void method performs an action but does not return any value. The method header includes the keyword void to indicate this. So if you have public void greet system.out.println hello, this is a void method, meaning it does not return anything. It simply prints this. If it were a non-void method and it was returning something, you would not be able to use system.out.println at all, and you would have to have a return statement in there somewhere. A mutator method, also called a setter, is a type of void method that modifies the value of an instant or static variable, which belong to the class itself rather than each instance or object of the class. So an example would be public void set name, string new name, name is equal to new name. So you're passing in the parameter new name, and it's updating the instance variable name and setting it equal to new name. So mutator methods control how data inside an object is updated. So in our example before, for instance, if we created a dog that was 4 years old and had brown fur, then using one of the mutator methods, we would be able to change the fur color to black instead. Next, topic 5.6, writing methods. Procedural abstraction refers to how code is simplified by instructions being grouped into named methods. So breaking large problems into smaller subproblems makes code easier to manage and understand. A method is written with a header, also called a signature, and a body in braces. So example, public void bark. So this would be the header. Methods are called using the object name and the dot operator. So object.method. When calling a method, you can pass values inside parentheses as parameters. So object.method and then input1, input2, where each of these inputs would be a parameter. And the actual parameters are the inputted values when calling the method must match with formal parameters declared in the method header. So for example, if you have public void method type param1 and type param2, the types for parameter 1 and parameter 2 must match when you're entering in the actual values. Number and types of actual parameters must align with the method's parameter list. So in this example, you have 2 parameters, so when you're calling this method, you must enter 2 parameters of these particular types. So when passing a primitive value, the method receives a copy of that value. Changes to the value inside the method won't affect the original. When passing a reference to an object, the method receives a copy of the reference, not the object itself. So both the formal and actual parameters point to the same object, making them aliases. Though the method can modify the object through the reference, it's considered good practice not to change mutable parameters, meaning they can be changed, right, unless explicitly required. Topic 5.7, static variables and methods. The static keyword is used to declare variables and methods, so static appears in the declaration itself. Access modifiers like public or private can still be applied to static elements. And so the difference is that static variables belong to the class and not to any one object. And so static variables are shared across all instances of the class. So an example would be a static counter variable, which keeps track of how many objects of the class are created. So for example, with our dog class from before, if you had a static counter variable, it would count how many dogs were being created. So if at some point 10 dogs were created, the value of this variable would be 10. Next, the static variables are accessed using the class name and dot notation. So class name dot the variable name. Next, static methods are also associated with the class and not any object. So static methods can access and change static variables. They cannot access instance variables, so those that are not static and are instead associated with objects. And they cannot call non-static instance methods directly. However, non-static methods can access static variables or methods. Next, topic 5.8, scope and access. So scope refers to where a variable can be accessed or used within a program. So if it's defined inside a constructor or method, its scope would be within that constructor or method only. Also loops as well. Only accessible within the block, constructor, or method or loop where they are declared. So it cannot be marked with access modifiers like public or private. If a local variable has the same name as an instance variable, whenever that name is referenced in the method or constructor, the local variable will be used, not the instance variable. Parameters declared in a method or constructor header are treated as local variables. That means they are only accessible within the body of that method or constructor. Next, topic 5.9, this keyword. So this keyword refers to the current object, the one whose method or constructor is executing. And it is only available inside non-static methods and constructors. So methods and constructors which belong to objects and not the class itself. So they can be used to access instance variables, especially when they have the same name as local variables or parameters. So this dot variable name. And they can call other methods from the same object. So this dot method name. And they can you can use the this keyword to pass the current object as an argument to another method or constructor. So some method name and you're passing in this as a parameter. Next, static methods belong to the class, not to any particular object. So since there is no specific object involved with these static methods, the this keyword cannot be used in static methods. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out the video for Unit 6.